Hi, I'm Jared Harris.
And my name's Mark Weir.
We're here today to talk to you about composting. What is composting? Composting is the natural recycling of nutrients. And I know what you're thinking. What are nutrients? Nutrients are what everything needs to grow. Things like sugar, metals, even nitrogen can be considered a nutrient. Now, composting breaks down all of the foods and things we eat into the smallest nutrients, making them available for plants, chickens,
Okay, so like Jared
bugs.
was saying, there's a whole bunch of recycling that can be done by compost, which is the natural process of breaking this down. But there's lots of components to compost. For one, you have to have the right microbiotics, so very small little creatures that we can't even see that are in there breaking down these different items. But you also need larger organisms like worms and bugs. So what I have here is a couple of examples of different composts at different stages. And all of these different organisms are involved in breaking this down and recycling these nutrients. So let's take a look here. First we start with regular food scraps. And these are chicken eggs and parts of different plants that we've eaten. And what we do is we put those in and we let these different organisms eat these up. And so these worms, you can see some of these worms come through and they start mixing up all this material. And then as that occurs over time, it breaks down even more and naturally becomes a nice soil amendment. And we can do these in much larger bins too, like you can see here. This is all dirt that's been created, wonderful soil that's been created by the recycling of these nutrients. And even the chickens like it. You can see chickens here are part of this system because they're breaking down and eating some of the bugs and recycling that nutrients.
Now, what can you compost? Well, nutrients that you can compost are things like leafy greens, lettuce, peppers. Even bread makes great compostable material. Eggs can also be composted. Eggs have things like calcium that are great components for soil nutrients. Now, it's important that you understand things that you can't compost. Things like bacon and meats should not be composted. Even things like cheese should not be put in the compost. And especially things like chemicals. Chemicals can destroy the bacteria and the worms that are working to make the compost happen.
Okay, so as Jared said, there's lots of different things that you can and cannot compost. But how do you get started composting? Well, one good way is to have a nice bucket in your kitchen that you can put these items in before you take them down to your worms. And so whenever you find some food that's maybe doesn't look very delicious anymore, like these old carrots, we can just go ahead and add the carrots to our compost bin, and we'll go ahead and take these downstairs. Now again, it's important to remember, only the carrots can be composted, not the plastic wrapping that they come in. A matter of fact, when we can, we want to reduce the amount of plastic because this goes into a landfill and doesn't ever break down.
So here we are, back at our compost bin with our full bucket of compost from the kitchen. Now, to begin composting, what we have here is a nice bucket. Inside are worms and those small bacteria that are going to break down our compost into the nutrients we talked about. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add our compost to the bucket. Now it's important to give those worms and bacteria access to the compost and to make sure that you're really breaking it down into the soil nutrients that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix the compost in. And now we can begin the process of making these soil nutrients that we see here.
Okay, so now we've had our compost that's been sitting for 8 to 12 weeks. And as you can see, it's really good soil. So this is exactly what we want to feed our plants. So we can take some of this compost and just scoop it right in. And we'll take this over to some plants and we'll add it as some nutrients to make them grow strong. Okay, so once we have our nutrients, we can just add it back to our soil here for these plants. And we're returning the nutrients that was once a plant back into the soil, and with these different microbes that'll help these plants grow big and strong. And also, we're making sure that this stuff doesn't end up in a landfill where it just adds to destruction.
Thanks for tuning in for this short lesson on composting.
I hope you guys have learned something important about recycling these nutrients, and you're going to go ahead and take these lessons and use them in your own home.